Well, welcome to today's Newcastle Borough Council Cabinet meeting. Welcome to members and officers in the room, also a member of the press, and also to those watching online. If you'd like to see the agenda for the meeting, this is in the comments section of the YouTube video. I'm not sure where it is for those watching live, but you can look at it on the council's website, I believe. Joining me today, cabinet members are Councillor Craig Skelling, who's our portfolio holder for leisure, culture and heritage, Councillor Jill Heaton, portfolio holder for community safety and wellbeing, and also Councillor David Hutchins, portfolio holder for sustainable environment, and Councillor Andy Fee, portfolio holder for strategic planning, and Councillor Leader Simon Tagg. And we have no apologies today, so we can move to item 2 on the agenda, which is declarations of interest. Do we have any 4 items on the agenda? Not seeing anything, cabinet members. That's great. Item 3 is minutes of the previous meeting as attached in our agenda on page 3 onwards. Can we agree those are correct record? Thank you. That brings us to our first item of business, which is our regular Wally's Quarry update. It's been an eventful period since our last cabinet meeting. We've seen the first suspension notice by the Environment Agency, all for 8 days, and that was lifted. And we have reported the details, the council's take on that, and also a lot of detail about our abatement notice process, and also, as usual, an update on the complaints and also the monitoring equipment data. So, as usual, I'm going to ask Chief Executive Martin Hamilton to introduce the report, and I think he'll probably spend a lot of time talking about the abatement notice process as per the report as well. I think people will be really interested in. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm going to do a double act with Nesta Parker, who will cover some of the abatement notice stuff. But you'll see it's actually a slightly fuller report than usual, and that reflects the fact that February was a particularly bad month. By recent historic standards. So we've had over 1,000 complaints to us during February, and as is the norm, the Environment Agency's complaints have been significantly higher. They tend to be the first point of complaint rather than ourselves, so they tend to see complaints at a much higher level. As has consistently been the case, we see the complaints tracked pretty faithfully with the air quality information. And one of the, I guess, the slight fluctuations that we see here is normally I'll be sat here and I'll be saying, as ever, MMF9 on the Gallon-Gale is the worst monitoring station. Through February, that wasn't the case. MMF1 has been consistently showing that hydrogen sulfide levels for a third of the time have been above the annoyance threshold. So a third of the time each week that has been above the annoyance threshold. MMF9 has been a little bit more variety than that, still quite high, but not reaching that level or that consistency. So while February was bad, as you mentioned, at the beginning of March, we then had the Environment Agency for the first time issue a suspension notice that suspended operations on the site while works were done. Wally's Quarry did those works in a little over a week, and then the site was reopened for waste again, I guess about 10 days from the initial closure. So the other thing that happened during this time is on the back of the conversation that we've been having with Wally's Quarry and the engagement we have with them as a consequence of our abatement notice, our landfill expert and Wally's landfill expert got together and to try and see whether there was any additional measures that they could identify. And you'll see in the report that there was some additional application of geomembrane applied to some parts of the site. In total, 21,000 square metres of sites that's been covered with geomembrane as a consequence of those discussions. That's over and above the capping work that was required by the Environment Agency. Last week, we saw the complaints to ourselves come down a little. So you can see through February, they were around the 382, 386 a week, 397, 333, 317, and then last week they came down to 99, which is still, a not insignificant level of complaints. What we don't yet know is whether that change is due to changes in the weather, changes in conditions on site as a consequence of the work required by the Environment Agency and the work that was undertaken proactively on the back of the two experts engaging, or whether it's actually some combination of them both. So we'll need to see over the coming weeks whether or not that level stays down. So that's, I think, probably a reasonable summation of where we are in terms of the nuisance aspect of this. Clearly, February was a bad month as far as conditions for local residents are concerned. On 14th of February this year, we had a special council meeting to discuss the situation with Wally's, and there was a lengthy debate that resulted in a resolution that's reproduced at pages 4 and 5 of the report. And the report provides some updates on where we are with those various elements that come out through that special council. So one of the issues that was agreed on was that a scrutiny committee would be established to look at this issue. Arrangements are in hand. We now have the membership for that scrutiny panel, and arrangements are in hand for that to start its work very soon. The Environment Agency, there were two areas where there was calls on the Environment Agency. One was to bring forward a closure notice, and the second was to share a year's worth of data so that the long-term health impact could be assessed. I wrote to the Chief Executive of the Environment Agency on the back of that, and the response is appended to the report. The response really reiterates their position around closure, which is that closure is a last resort and we would need to follow process. And as far as the data is concerned, they again note that there was a problem with the data that is being rectified, or they're going through a process with that. And while they had expected that it would have been published by now, there's some small delay in that, but we do expect that long-term data to be made available in due course. That will allow the UK Health Security Agency to undertake a fresh risk assessment on the long-term exposure that's reflected in that data. One of the additional elements that was covered off in that council resolution was to look at legal options that were available to the council, keeping the focus on improving the conditions for local residents coming from the site. And within that, there was an expectation that we would look at the potential of judicial reviews, the potential of doing something with the abatement notice, or any other legal advice. Now, we've commissioned specific advice on that will come forward through scrutiny and through council in due course. But appended to the report, pending that advice coming, is our monitoring officer's advice in terms of judicial reviews, and then we'll also pick up on some of the issues around the abatement notice. In terms of the judicial reviews at council, there was discussion around two particular elements for this. One was a judicial review of the EA's decision not to bring forward a suspension notice on the site. Now, clearly, since that council meeting, the EA has brought forward a suspension notice on the site and has had work on the site cease for just over a week while remediation was taking place. Now, that doesn't preclude a judicial review of whether or not that could or should have been done earlier, but it would, I guess, question the value of undertaking a review of something that has actually then come to pass. The second judicial review that has been mooted is around the Secretary of State's decision not to grant a public inquiry into the regulatory performance of the EA and what has gone on with this site. And the demolition officers note sort of highlight some of the complexities and costs, etc., that will be associated with doing that. So pending getting further King's Council advice on this, they will come forward to Council. That's the position as far as that's concerned. Now, what we've also done is set out in the report in from paragraph 2.26 onwards is the process that we need to follow in terms of the abatement notice that we have in relation to the annoyance on the site. And members will have seen before a flow chart that we use around this. This is really sort of a simplified version of it that allows us to say, right, this is where we are, or this is the process that we need to follow. And there's a couple of really critical parts of this process that need to be understood at the point that a decision would be taken as to whether we were going to take enforcement action or not. Go to court with it. There's, if you like, through the abatement notice process and the mediation that's around that, there's an ongoing dialogue, there's an ongoing challenge with the operator that is part and parcel of the effect of that abatement notice. So we're effectively using that every day with the operator. And you'll see in the report some of the actions that they're taking on the back of those discussions. But a couple of things that are of critical importance, and I guess these won't be new to members. You've heard these before. One is the issue around best practical means, and essentially we could have a situation where there is an odour off site that is an annoyance, but if the practice on site is consistent with best industry standards, what's referred to as best practical means, then that odour becomes something that we are not able to take enforcement action against because there's best practical means. So that's one of the things we would really need to understand. And then the second issue is, in order to progress to a court process, we would need Secretary of State's permission. And I think then the final part of the jigsaw is also to really understand where the Environment Agency are in their processes at any particular point, because we've been quite clear the focus of this needs to be about bringing about a resolution of the odour-related suffering in the community. And if the Environment Agency at a point in time are well on with that and are using their considerable enforcement powers, then there is a question about the added value that's presented by the council also getting involved in that process. So that's that. I say that's set out in 2.6. And if you want to get some more detail on the nuances of that, I think myself and Ness are probably easiest to do that through questions rather than through trying to take you through the minutiae of it. One other thing that I think is probably worth noting at this stage, and we're starting to see over the last month other sites around the country where this issue is becoming apparent. So on recent news feeds, you'll see there's one in Bury, there's one in Pembrokeshire, I think there's one in Shropshire as well. So there appears to be something happening in the landfill world that is actually seeing some of these problems now come up. So it's where we used to be dealing with this very much on our own. It does now seem to be something that other communities are also starting to have to deal with.
Thank you, Martin. As ever, for a comprehensive report. I think the community were relieved when the EA finally took the steps of a suspension notice. I think they were quite shocked at the short amount of time that was in place, particularly as the EA were briefing out that the work required would take until the end of March. And so within 8 days for it to be lifted, I think that was a kick in the teeth. I've said in other council chambers about the fact that we should be waiting to see the results of that. You say early on, the results are that the complaints are slightly down, and I think we're waiting for this week, aren't we, which is the full week of data from the previous week of obviously the suspension notice being lifted and all of the deliveries starting up again on that side. So I think he's very disappointed, and I think a lot of people are still disappointed and shocked by what happened from the EA yet again. The Environment Agency letting people down, in my view. Going to open it up to comments and questions on the report. Start with Andy.
Thank you very much, Simon. Yeah, once again, it's a full report, and I thank officers for that. But it makes for somewhat dispiriting reading, doesn't it? Really. Yes, we can think about the council, and I'm very grateful for Appendix 5 that we see here, which goes back over some of the things which concern me about the notion of judicial review at full council. Again, I think colleagues will have seen paragraph 2 of that appendix, which points out that judicial review is about process. It's not about the actual fact that there is the facility there or anything about it. It's just how a decision is made. And again, I think, very important paragraph 4. If a judicial review is successful, the court will not substitute what it thinks is, in inverted commas, the correct decision. In other words, this really, I thought then at full council, I still feel now, that to go down this route, really, we spend a lot of money, but we don't get any return on our money. That said, I share the frustration of the people who thought that misguidedly, in my opinion, is a remedy. I find it incomprehensible. In fact, I find it rather shameful and contemptible that the Secretary of State will not allow a public inquiry on this. I think that's letting the people of Newcastle-under-Lyme down very, very badly. There's no two ways about that. I'm pleased that we've heard from the Chief Executive that we now have things in place for the scrutiny panel that we want, and that's up and running, and hopefully that will bring some important data to light in that regard. As regards the EA, I note comments in this report, seemingly with no irony attached to them, that the EA have been overzealous in their monitoring of this site. That will come as news, I think, to people on the Orme Road, which I cycle up and down on a regular basis. But I do think we should be looking to the EA. They put in a series of works. They say that these things have to happen by the 24th of this month. Let's hope they're there on the 24th of this month to make sure they've happened. Let's hope that they're also going to be there on the 25th and the 26th of this month to make sure that those things really are happening. When we look at our own process, and again, I thank the Chief Executive for taking us through it, there are two things that strike me. One is, if we get another outburst, and a really appalling outburst, as we've seen in February of this, that seems to me to be presumptive evidence that these best practical means are not being used, because if they were, why is this awful smell happening in that regard? And it would also seem to me that maybe if we do get another series of incidents, and again, we were talking, and Chief Executive was talking about this as being a third of the time. So, let's put that in actual context. That means that 8 hours in every day, on average, this is above the annoyance threshold. That's appalling. But if we get back to there, shouldn't we actually be thinking about, first of all, asking a hard question about these best practical means? And also, should we be thinking about this operator's right to reply under caution about that? Because we always in this process seem to be thinking about jam tomorrow. There's always a receding horizon. And I understand people's frustration about that. And frankly, I share it.
14 minutes.
Okay. I'll pick up the focus on the best practical means issue there, if I may. Were that it were so simple as to say there's a smell, therefore best practical means can't be in place. There are two issues that I would reflect here about the challenge of best practical means. One is that they only apply to normal operations. So if you actually have some adverse event that happens on a site that results in an off-site odour, and it can be shown that that was if you like, an aberration, then best practical means doesn't apply in those situations. So it is if you like, say, a normal operating circumstance rather than some adverse event. The other issue is that by the very nature of the defence of best practical means, it does mean that there is the prospect of an operator using the best techniques that are available at the time, the best of methods in terms of managing the site, but there's still being an odour off site. That's why it's, if you like, it's there as a defence. So there is the possibility of odour off site, and best practical means they can actually sit they can be coexist, if you like. So it's not as simple as saying there's a bad smell, therefore it shows the best practical means aren't in place. The other dimension that sits with the best practical means that makes this so darn complex is there is a criteria within that is about the affordability of them. So this is the best means that are available within reasonable resources. So it's, not, if you like, you should be able to fix this if you threw millions and millions and millions of pounds at it. So there's if you like, a financial proportionality element. So it's not so straightforward. Ultimately, the only person that can determine whether best practical means are in place at a point in time would be a judge. If you were challenging them, the way to manage it in this circumstance is using our experts and the operators' experts to take a view as to whether or not we got best practical means in place at the time. And of course, the Environment Agency also would have a view at any particular point. So it's not a binary situation. Is that about right?
That's articulated very well.
Thank you, Lester. Steve.
Thank you, Chairman. I was at full council at the county last Thursday, and a very good friend of mine lives near Bolly's Quarry, and he was speaking with his usual passion, oratorical skills, and he was filling up with emotion. He probably lives nearer the quarry than anybody else in this room does, and to see this gentleman who I've got a very fond of and a lot of time for, being almost reduced to tears talking about this was heartbreaking, really. I agree entirely with what Andy said really about the this best practical means or something. I think this is the whole sort of saga hinges on this, because if Wally's Quarry are employing best practical means, the best practical means don't work. So what's the next stage? I don't know. It's very good. They're doing everything they can possibly do to do this. Well, that's great, but it still smells. I think it's a salient point to this. But I've gone to this report at some length, and I made a few notes on things that it's no offense to you, by the way, Martin. I'm not used to be. That was a go at you. So,
But yeah, offended.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's one part. The EA state there have been recent unacceptable increases in hydrogen sulfate emissions around Wally's Quarry and odour reports from local residents. We have every sympathy with the community and remain committed to maintaining long-term improvements in emissions from the site. Well, let's see them. That'll be good, won't it? Another one. As the EA is fully aware, there is already extensive work, this is Wally's Quarry underway involving gas infrastructure capping at the site. This work was already in progress prior to the EA just issuing the notice and was instigated and continues to be fully funded by Wally's Quarry for development design and commence works prior to service notice. Well, yeah, great. It's not working, it still smells. Next one down. The Environment Agency will now carefully assess the effectiveness of the action, taking to reduce fugitive emissions of landfill gas to the areas in the site and notified in the notice. We will continue to apply WPL, Wally's Quarry, to comply with the environmental permit and implement all the measures necessary to manage emissions of landfill gases from the site. All regulatory options made under consideration, but it still smells. So there's lots of good intentions, lots of talk in this of the agency from what is quite, but I can't get around the fact that I'm standing up in a council meeting and listen to an 83-year-old man almost breaking down in tears as he lives near this site. I saw a letter somewhere here from the Environment Agency, and it talks about you will be aware that the method of the environment is conducted on a independent peer review led by DEFRA's Chief Science Officer. Whilst we expect the group to complete this work by the end of January 2024, there's been a short delay. This letter was dated the 7th of March. If that's a short delay, I'd hate to think what a long one would be. But it's just thoroughly depressing when I read this all the way through.
Thank you. Any comments?
I don't think any of us would say it's anything other than thoroughly depressing.
You are seeing David.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the officers again for a very, very detailed report to this cabinet meeting. I'm very pleased to read in section 2.26 that the council's enforcement policy involves a sequential approach to enforcement. In order to progress any enforcement action in relation to the abatement notice, there is a process that needs to be followed, and the thrust of the action taken in relation to the policy is to bring about an improvement in the odour for the community. I think that sets things out really well for our residents. So the process is detailed there in 2.26. So the receipt of an odour complaint, gathering evidence, determining more about the odour, operators' right to reply, review against the enforcement policy, then the council decision, and then a commencement of the legal action. So, as I said, we have a sequential approach to enforcement, and that's right. And I'm pleased to say that it's detailed in this report.
David, Andy.
If I may, can I just revisit parts of the response to my contribution by Chief Executive? We talked about, again, best practical means and such like. I mean, it still seems to me that the fact that there is what's called an adverse event or an aberration seems to me that in itself is presumptive evidence that BPM is not happening, because otherwise, why is there an aberration? That's interesting. But the one thing that sort of upset me most, really, in one respect, is this notion that if the operator claims that it's too expensive to put this right, then they don't have to put it right. I mean, so, I can make an enormous mess on the street and I'll say, well, I'm terribly sorry, I can't afford to clean up that mess, so you just have to put up with the mess. Is there any documentation we have that would give us some sort of sense of proportionality there? Where is the limit of expenditure which is then deemed to be excessive, so to speak, or is that something which is only determined by courts or whatever?
Esther.
Maybe if I can assist a little bit further there. I think in relation to the cost element, what you usually have is industry standard guides in relation to what constitutes best practical means or industry standards in relation to these things. And that's in relation to all the elements that we've regularly reported on in terms of, the contain, capture and the destroy, and the mechanisms that would be reasonable for a landfill type to undertake. Now, I think in terms of it, the economics of it is one of those elements. Obviously, it has to be taken into account the technology that's available, the practicality of delivering those, but, one of those elements is the economics of it. And it's not something that is described in a matter of, over a certain financial amount is too much. It is what is reasonable in terms of the technology. To actually install it, to run it, and also in terms of the mitigation of the odour.
Obviously Martin talks about and we've always worried about this, that, Wally's Quarry was the first of a number of landfills that were going in the same direction. I think we've been saying that to the EA for the last couple of years. They haven't listened by the looks of it. They haven't dealt with Wally's Quarry. Now they've got a whole list of quarries. So the ludicrous elected mayor for the Manchester city region, wherever he does, jumping up and down about it, even though I don't think he has any powers relating to landfills, the BBC overblown and overrated. Is that we have a situation where I'm only concerned about Wally's Quarry. It does seem from Steve, the emotion that it raises and the fear and the absolute distress that it raises needs to be dealt with. We've been let down yet again by the Environment Agency in the way they've handled, I believe, the suspension notice. I know they're in the process. I know they're looking towards obviously getting more and more evidence, but for goodness sake, this has been going on for 2 or 3 years. So that puts the focus back on us as the council, doesn't it? It clearly, as Dave has just read out in the 2.26, we have an enforcement policy. I think it's fair to say that when people often say to me, or often say on social media, why is the council going to do anything with the abatement notices? That we're actually, the council, our officers, are actually working on the abatement notice, continually going through a process. I think what people, now we've seen this under 2.26, this chart, I think people have a right to know where we are on this procedure. I mean, obviously, we're talking about BPM. So are we at a point where we're determining that owners off the site are consistent with the breach of the abatement notice? I can't decide that. No elected member can decide that. It clearly says determined by officers on the evidence obtained to date. So I think that's what the people of Newcastle are waiting to hear, is if we have got to that stage where the owners off-site are consistent with the breach in the abatement notice. Can the officers update us on that?
I think you'll see in the report, I make reference to the fact that actually the owners off-site at this stage could be consistent with a breach of the abatement notice. The critical bit now as to whether or not that's an actionable situation is the question around whether it's a one-off event aberration where it fits with BPM, whether it's actually been resolved by the EA issue, etc. So the uptick that we saw would I think be consistent with a breach of the abatement notice as far as the owners are concerned, but we still do have these other issues around BPM, etc.
Okay, Marty. So can we say that this cabinet agrees with our officers that we believe and determine the owners off-site are a breach of the abatement notice on the evidence which we've got, but obviously caveating by now that has to be through the consideration of best possible means defence. Because that's a statement forward which this council hasn't made yet, but you're saying it's in the report.
Yeah, I would caution against saying a great deal of that until we have actually been through the entire legal process with regards to this. So let us bring forward to members the full the full evidence on this before you actually take a position on it.
Well, you're saying in the report that it actually does say that, so they must have.
I'm saying it's consistent with the breach. I'm not saying the abatement notice has been breached.
Right. Okay. That's what people are waiting for. And I think people watching this, people such as the press, have to realise that elected members. I would have prosecuted this company months and months ago, years ago, but we're working within a process and enforcement policy that clearly our officers have to work on and have to, when they are ready and when they are assured that to move forward, we will move forward. And of course, elected members will then be asked to provide the funding to allow a legal action to be taken. I think coming on to that funding, it's quite clear now, following the vote of full council and the report from our legal officer, that it would cost up to £1 million for just one JR judicial review, and that seems that would be related to the decision of the minister not to have a public inquiry. But we would have to spend up to £1 million on the abatement notice going forward. So I think a decision for a future full council is, I believe, because I believe the site will not come into compliance. I believe we're just waiting for the next peak, and we get to that, and eventually we're going to have to make a decision. This council and the EA, but this council and we can have influence over this council, is that we're going to have to make a decision at some point to basically enforce our enforcement policy on this operator that is causing so much issues to our residents. So I think the money, in my view, should be better spent on the abatement notice and the powers we have, rather than, I think it said this at full council, rather than second guessing a ministerial decision. I think we shouldn't give up the fight for a judicial review, and we should continue to press that. And perhaps under a new government, we saw the Labour Party jumping up and down, didn't we, at the last council meeting? Hopefully, when they're in control of the country in a few months, and they have the Secretary of State, that they will be calling for and bringing about a public inquiry, because they will have the power to do that as well. So we'll be obviously continuing our pressing for that. Whoever's in government, we don't care. We want a public inquiry into the EA and into DEFRA and into the actions of ministers and previous Secretary of States, I believe, as well on this. Any other comments on this? I think it's an issue which isn't going to go away. It's not going away. And we will certainly not allow it to go away until that odour is solved. So that people like, Steve talked about can rest safe in their houses and sleep at night, having worry about being gassed out of their homes by noxious gas. And again, we're still waiting for the Environment Agency to give us that correlated data. I think that is a scandal in its own right. It's a disgrace that they've taken so long when they promised just after Christmas, January, then it was the end of February, now it's the end of March. We're just about to approach in the last couple of weeks in March. Why have they not given us that data, and why have they not, so that health professionals can interpret it? It is a scandal, one which this government has overseen, one which there are EA officers that disappear and never be seen again, and new lot coming without any responsibility for the previous work of those officers. It is a scandal, and it needs sorting out. And if this government won't do it, I hope the next one will. Move the recommendations that we discuss this and we look into it. We've asked questions of our officers, as we are here to do. We haven't got a resolution to this at the moment, and it's a disgrace. Thank you. Next item is the item 5, the Newcastle Town Deal digital infrastructure. Really pleased to bring this item. I think we know about our Town Deal funding, which was obviously over £20 million for Newcastle. We're talking about the physical regeneration of the town. We've seen the Rycroft site and Wood Place mentioned, and the redevelopment of Midway. Also, a big part of the town deal plans is also for a digital infrastructure to help Newcastle to get ahead of the game on the rollout of digital infrastructure. And this report bringing today helps us to do that. Already, we do know that the rollout of gigabit and fibre broadband is going at pace, not only across the borough, but across the county, but also across the country. The plans here today will help us to get Newcastle ahead of the game and use some of our town deal levelling up money for genuine levelling up, and that's to bring us to the forefront of the digital revolution. So that's fast connections, not only for residents, but for businesses. And the paper before us today outlines the process of bringing that about through the town deal, and also having a series of digital hubs, hopefully based in and around our community centres across the borough, which will then enable us to bring that infrastructure forward quicker than the market may otherwise have delivered. So this has got the endorsements of the town deal board. So I'm happy to move the recommendations as that we note the progress on the digital infrastructure project as part of the town deal board, and authorises the Deputy Chief Executive in consultation with myself and the Deputy Leader to progress the digital infrastructure project to the next step. Procure partners to deliver a fibre network within the town deal area, and also authorises the same people again to examine and invest, to say potentially for connecting the key borough sites to the fibre network to release the full benefits of that investment. And then again, we talk about those key hubs, which could be our community centres, and then receive a further report on the digital inclusion elements of the project at a future cabinet meeting. So with the recommendations, Steve, I believe you're going to speak next.
Thank you. No, I endorse what you say, especially excited about the idea of some, not all, but some of our community centres, I think, who actually want it being involved in this. And obviously, the one that jumps out to you is Bradwell, which is a big old building and well benefit with this sort of thing. But no, actually, it's 50 kilometres of stuff going in, and we've been working on this really since the day one of the town deal, and to accomplish something is marvellous. It's not excellent. So please support it.
Thank you, Steve. That's a point on the community centres such as Bradwell. I think there's an opportunity for a building such as Bradwell, a very big building. You know, if there's a business that can relocate in there and co-locate with the community centre operation, you know, you could use that also perhaps broadband for that business, and also increase the viability of community centres in the long run. Any other comments on that? Anything to say, Craig, about from the community centre angle being included in the project?
Yeah, we are. We're currently looking at, we're on discussions with community centres throughout the borough. It's a second site that would be interested, but we're looking at what has capacity to facilitate the use of the sort of the project. So we'll keep you updated on any further progress.
Okay. Well, really good news story, I think, and another plank of the delivery of the town deal investment from central government as part of the levelling up for the Newcastle town. As I say, we've seen the physical results. This also gives a result for better connections with businesses and residents, so they can be at the forefront of the digital revolution that's taking place in all sectors of life at the moment. So I'm really pleased with that. All agree with the recommendations. Thank you. The next item then is a related item related to the town deal as well, and also our new Castle car park, and that's the electric vehicle charging points for our new car park. Steve's going to introduce this.
Yeah, thank you. This is for the Castle car park. I don't really understand what I'm saying now, but I think Councillor Easton's husband probably know what I'm talking about. The initial proposal from Zest Eco is to install 2 50 kilowatt DC chargers and 9 22 kilowatt AC chargers, covering 22 parking bays that pretty much expand further as demand increases. Now, these will be in the Newcastle car park. If you read further on, it says this proposal offers a low-risk option for the council as Zest Eco is liable for the provision, management, maintenance, and replacement of the EV chargers. So no cost to us. Company come and run it. We'll get a little bit of income off it, not very much, but we get 22 extra car parking extra square recharging place, and it costs us nothing. So absolutely happy to do this.
Yes, Steve, I think one of the main sort of drivers for the car park was obviously that the existing midway obviously didn't really facilitate not only EV charging points, but also the for example, pay on exit, etc. And also the the general feel of that car park was really poor, and the amount of money that they need to spend on it in future years to make it accessible for electric vehicles, even to carry the weight of electric vehicles, was not something which we were willing to do. So that's why we are putting the new car park on the right path, which will also facilitate and act as a cornerstone for the redevelopment of there as well. But the really key that we do have those EV charging points in there, and this report gets us on the way to doing that, partner with that company to deliver that, and also with some income though we're not that much coming in, which will help us when we have the car park up and running. Any other comments or questions on that paper? Steve's moved the recommendation. All agreed? Thank you. That brings us now to item 7, which is the Tree and Biodiversity Management Plan, and Davey's going to introduce this.
Thank you, Leader. The Tree and Biodiversity Management Plan aims to update cabinet members, elected members, and residents on the council's biodiversity management operations since 2018. It focuses on work programmes such as tree planting and wildflower meadows, and how these are managed moving forward. There are 6 main objectives of the Tree and the Biodiversity Management Plan. These include ensuring the council continues to manage and progress required tree works in relation to the council's current and future tree stock. The first 4 phases of the urban tree planting strategy saw just under 15,000 trees being planted in our wonderful and beautiful borough. Phase 5 is now well underway and should be completed by the end of March 2024, when I will be able to update Cabinet on the total trees that we have planted in phases 1 to 5 of our urban tree planting strategy. As you'll read from the report, £30,000 additional expenditure has been incorporated into the Council's arboricultural work programme to manage tree work operations effectively and sustainability. We recently sold a waste and recycling vehicle that was no longer required, and used the money to purchase an elevated work programme vehicle and tracker chipper to reduce risk and inefficiencies. Succession planning is important. Due to the retirement of a key member of the team, we recently hired a new arboricultural manager in Street Scene. Our Borough Council also continues managing and promoting wildflower meadows across the environment. Our progress to date in this area includes planting 11 wildflower meadows across the borough with 27 different species of wildflowers. Finally, Leader, the tree and biodiversity plan also details how to manage planting schemes for trees and wildflower meadows that can create carbon sequestration. The process of absorbing and storing the carbon out of the atmosphere, which will play a significant contribution to the council's net zero target for its own operations by 2030 and the wider borough by 2050. So in closing, Leader, I present this report to Cabinet for comment, discussion and hopefully approval. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Support you in bringing this forward. I think there's always, we've had this at scrutiny meetings and council meetings. We're going to plant all of these trees, how we're going to maintain them. I think it's set out in the policy how we plan to do that. I think it's more than just that, though, isn't it? As you say, that biodiversity management, wildflower meadows, and I get involved in funding for a couple of those, one at Sandy Lane and also at in Leeds Drive in the Westlands as well, where we have used County Council climate change money to facilitate the wildflower meadows last year. I think it was. Still wait to see how they come back this year and grow better and more vigorously than they did last year when they were first planted. So I think we can see a way forward on this. We do have to plant trees because we want to use that carbon offset in the future to reach our target of 2030. But also it means our green space is looking nicer and better for the public. And of course, we have preserved over 60 green spaces across the urban area of the borough for carbon capture areas where these trees are now being planted as part of our policy. As we announced in February, we've also now rolling that out into rural area, village areas, with a series of carbon capture areas for tree planting being identified and agreed with the communities in places like Audley, Madeley, out in Loggerheads and Baldysgate, etc. in our rural areas. So look forward to those coming forward in the next phase of the tree planting. But this policy, I think, is good, is of its time, and will see us forward. And this council is investing in ensuring when it does plant trees, it looks after them. One of the things I'd like to just highlight from the report is, and I think I saw something it would have been a while ago in the Daily Mail, I think it was, over 2 million trees planted by local authorities died. Because of I think they had a drought, didn't we, last year, and part of the summer before that, and it hasn't stopped raining since. I think one of the points, as it says in this report, is we expect that a number of trees, as in anything you plant, won't take or will die or will be vandalised. I noticed that some of the one tree that we've just recently planted on Woolstanton Marsh has unfortunately been vandalised. There's still dozens and dozens of others we planted that haven't been, but we do get that as well. I think it is worth noting that a percentage of the trees will not take or will be damaged and will need to be replaced, and that's part of this strategy that we accept that will happen. That's no fault on our council staff and not looking after them. It's no fault on the communities that live around them. These things just happen, and we can expect it will blow up in the national press. All tree plants, whether they're the Forest of Mercy or whether they're the Woodland Trust, whether they're the Wildlife Trust in the county, or whether it's council, some of their trees will not make it through to their first year or first few years for various reasons, and that's acknowledged in this policy. I think we have to talk about that. But I think a great policy to bring forward and a management plan will help us as we plant more trees to ensure that they prosper and then we get the results out of them, not only for our communities with nice trees on their green spaces, but also that carbon offset in the future will help us to reach our net zero target. Anybody else like to say anything on it? Steve, anything to mention?
No, I think it's yes. I say no, that's not talking. Yeah, I think we continually get asked the question of how we're going to maintain these trees. I think it's answered this, and then I can actually support that. Thank you.
Thank you. So David's moved the recommendations, all agreed. Thank you. That now brings us then to our next item, which is item 8, contract award for Whammy football changing room development. And this has come back to us, hasn't it, Steve, from a decision we made, I think it was before Christmas, well before Christmas, but we had trouble with our chosen contractors who had to go out to tender again. And this is the update for you, Steve, on that.
It is actual, that's the biggest names, I think, so on the confidential appendix. What this is, though, is a football changing facility on the Whammy. It's going to be run by Newcastle Town Football Club. Now, I'm a Clayton councillor, but a Westlands councillor. I know about Row Lane Fields, which Newcastle Town run. They've had £1 million investment there on the all-weather pitch in the middle of it. And it is a superb facility, and there are hundreds and hundreds of children there. To encourage children football, and I'm sure that the Newcastle Town running this for us on behalf of the council, it'll be equally successful. Although it's the sort of not deal type thing, it's actually just in Crossy, but it'll pull children in from both Crossy and it's changing facilities, it's laboratories and things like that on the place like that. I think it's an absolutely superb.
Okay, any other speakers on this item? We've got the recommendations before us, that we note the progress on it and also authorise the Deputy Chief Exec with Steve and myself to progress that further along the line set out in the recommendations. All agreed. Thank you. That brings us now to our next item, item 9, which is the Sport England swimming pool grant for Kisgrove Sports Centre. Really pleased that the community run sports centre is being awarded this money. We have to then passport it through to them, which we're doing in this report. And this is for them to address some of one of the biggest issues they've had since the opening is, of course, when they opened, energy prices went through the roof. So obviously the trustees and under the leadership of Mark Clues have been thinking of ways that they can, over the long term, bring the bills down. Because obviously running a swimming pool and a sports facility such as that is an energy user. They're taking all the measures they can to cut down on energy use for efficiency and also climate change implications. But they put in a bid for capital support for potential for solar panel on the roof of the sports centre, and I'm pleased to say that that was granted by Sport England. And the recommendation is that we note the grant for Sport England from their swimming pool fund. And in principle, accepted by the council to support the project at Kisgrove Sports Centre, and we authorise the Deputy Chief Executive in consultation with myself to authorise to sign the necessary agreement to grant and passport the funding through to Kisgrove Sports Centre, so they can look to obviously progress their solar panel scheme, which will help to keep their bills down for running the centre. And I think I'd say again, congratulations to the trustees and all those working and also those volunteering at the sports centre. I hear good news from it all the time. Membership up, busy, great facility, and I think it was really worth the investment. The council put in that £7 million to bring the building back into use, along with some town deal money as well, which we put in there, and also let it go from strength to strength. This isn't going to cost our council anything. It's money we're passporting through, which will help to continue the good work that Kisgrove Sports Centre are doing, and hopefully continue the long-term facility there, which Kisgrove wants it back. It's got it back now, and it's showing its true worth. Comments, Craig?
Thank you. As a local councillor and residents of Kisgrove and Ravens Club, I welcome this funding from Sport England. The fitting of solar panels and combined heating power units will go a long way to working towards net zero carbon emissions throughout the borough. At the same time, it'll help drive energy savings and reduce the operational costs of the centre itself. And the centre itself, it's a well-run, efficient centre in Kisgrove, and it has been done. It has been so since it reopened. One thing I'd like to say, could you commend the officers involved in this bit as well? Because initially there were 2 bits put together, one for Jubilee 2 and the other one for Kisgrove, but only one under a local authority could be accepted. And the time frame for this was really tight for the officers to do that. And so I'd like to give them a nod for the work that they've done very well. And I welcome this funding and look forward to the benefits that will bring to Kisgrove Town Centre.
Thank you, Craig. Echoing your comments there. I wasn't really mentioning now because we've obviously lost out to Kisgrove Sports Centre, but we're not concerned too much about that because obviously our sports centre in Kisgrove is a community facility which covers the north of our borough. So we're really pleased that they have gained this money for their project. So I've read the recommendations out. All agreed. Thank you. That moves us on to our next item, which is our forward plan. And we'll go through that page by page as we do. The first couple of pages refer to the meeting we've got today, and we've dealt with all of those items. If we come to page 140, look at our April meeting, where we're looking at our Sustainable Environment Strategy Update Action Plan, which is assessments on the road to net zero by 2030, that we talked about earlier. Another one is quarry update. Leaders board terms of reference, irrecoverable items, and that covers our April meeting. Then we're next cabinet will be in June. After that, we'll have a Lord's Quarry update, Kisgrove Town deal, award of shared services garage replacement, and of the award of the contract for Castle Car Park payment systems and a taxi metering fares item as well. So that covers us up till June. Do we agree the forward plan? Okay. Item 11 is urgent business. I don't have any other business, but before we move into our confidential item, it says the last meeting of our outgoing chief executive, Martin. As we did full council, I'm going to, and we can do now, to pay tribute to Martin for the work he's done for us over the last 4 or so years. Particularly as I think on the Wallace Quarry issue, which you've fronted at cabinet since the very beginning. We've been having these updates since this crisis became acute and became the problem it did in 2021, even though the quarry stood for many years before that. But I'd like to say a personal thank you to Martin for the work he's done, support for me as leader over the year as well, and also support for cabinet and members in general. And wish you all the best in your future endeavours outside of Newcastle, and also for obviously everything you've done for us as well as chief executive. And I'll open it up now to comments from other members. Steve.
Yeah, that's just exactly what you said, Martin. Thank you really for everything you've done, especially Wallace Quarry, which you're sitting there as if we're asking questions. It's your fault, and it's not. And it's the way you take that and handle it. And if you come every month with this report and the work and commitment that you put into Wallace Quarry, I think it's been exceptional. But it's the support you've given me, and I'm sure everybody else around the table has been absolutely second to none. And I wish you every joy in whatever your future brings you. Andy.
Now, I think it's what we're going to have, and this is the strength of, I think, Martin's time here is simply the repetition of lots of thanks, and I would like to add my thanks to what Martin's done. Sometimes I think it's hard as a local government officer, because lots of things that we do, which you deserve credit for, tends to drift to other people, and I suppose that comes with the territory at one level. But I think we've been lucky to have a chief executive who's been exceptionally good at helping us run this council, and we've got ourselves to a good place. I mean, once again, I remember at full council, Martin, you saying you'd like to have resolved the issues of Wallace Quarry, and I have every sympathy. It must be a little bit like Sisyphus pushing the rock up to the top of the hill just to see the rock come bouncing back down the hill. And I wish you every success for the future, and I hope that there won't be another Wallace Quarry in it.
Thanks, Martin.
David.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Martin for his help. When I joined the cabinet in May 2023, when I joined the cabinet in May 23, I was the new kid on the block until Councillor Skelding joined cabinet. And when I used to see Martin upstairs, he very often say, "Do you need anything? Do you need anything from the officers? Do you have everything you need for your meeting?" And you were always very attentive, and you were always very positive, and you gave whatever support was needed, and that really helped. And I just want to say a big thank you.
Great.
Thanks. Yeah, Martin, like David's just says I'm the new boy on the block now, sort of thing, and the relatively short time that I've spent on cabinet and as a member of the council, I've always felt that you're the sort of guy, if we needed any support, any help or any assistance, we could just come to you quite easily and draw on your wealth of knowledge and expertise, which I'm sure sadly going to be missed throughout the borough. And I'd just like to wish you all the best in the future.
Jill.
I bet you'll be glad this meeting finishes, won't you? Yeah, I'd like to echo that, and let's say thank you for your support and advice, and always being approachable, and not just from your time on the cabinet, but also from when I was the mayor. It's been really appreciated by me, and I hope you get a glorious summer while you're having some time off.
Thank you, and thank you again, Marty, from all of us. We'll move on then to our next item, which is item 12, just the disclosure of event information. We do have an item, as Steve pointed out earlier, which is the contract award for the Whammy football changing room development part 2. It's a confidential item, so I move and resolve that probably be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following report, because it's likely to have disclosure of event information as per the local government act as set out there from 1972. All agreed? Thank you. And we'll now turn off the broadcast.